You know, I get that you do a lot of good on your show. I understand that you give a lot of information that's great information about health, and you do it in a way that's easily understandable. You're very talented, you're obviously very bright, you've been trained in science-based medicine. Now, here's 3 statements you made on your show. You may think magic is make-believe, but this little bean has scientists saying they found the magic weight loss cure for every body type. It's green coffee extract. Quote, I've got the #1 miracle in a bottle to burn your fat. It's raspberry ketone. Quote, Garcinia cambogia, it may be the simple solution you've been looking for to bust your body fat for good. I don't get why you need to say this stuff because you know it's not true. So why, when you have this amazing megaphone and this amazing ability to communicate, why would you cheapen your show by saying things like that?
Yeah, why would Dr. Oz do that? Without question, this 2014 congressional hearing displayed some nasty work. But which side was the nasty on? Was it Dr. Oz or the senators? I have my thoughts about that, and I'll answer it at the end of this video. But first, let me provide some background. The preceding clip featured Senator Claire McCaskill. And let me tell you, anyone who heard her whole speech and questioning of Dr. Oz agrees that she tore into him. The irony is that Dr. Oz had appeared intending to make the case that he was a victim and to advocate for action against companies who had used his name and likeness to promote their products, something Dr. Oz claims he had never agreed to. This Senate hearing took place June the 17th, 2014, and with the purpose to address safety concerns of over-the-counter diet supplements and products. Dr. Oz showed up like, yeah, let's do something about these unscrupulous vendors using my image and likeness without my permission. And the senators turned on him. What was his response?
I actually do personally believe in the items that I talk about in the show. I passionately study them. I recognize that oftentimes they don't have the scientific muster to present as fact, but nevertheless, I would give my audience the advice I give my family all the time, and I've given my family these products, specifically the ones you mentioned. I'm comfortable with that part. Where I do think I've made it more difficult for the FTC is that in an intent to engage viewers, I use flowery language.
What flowery language, Dr. Oz?
Thank you. From African mango to green coffee, it's the most talked about topic. Everybody wants to know, what's the newest, fastest fat buster? You've been stopping me on the street, emailing me. Even my family is asking the same question. How can I burn fat without spending every waking moment exercising and dieting? I just don't have any time to put in more effort. Well, thanks to brand new scientific research, I can tell you about a revolutionary fat buster. You're hearing it here first. It's called Garcinia cambogia.
Oh, that flowery language. That clip was from the show where he introduced his audience to Garcinia cambogia. It was one of his most controversial presentations, right alongside the one featuring raspberry ketones for weight loss and green coffee extract also for weight loss. With bombastic flowery promotion of these products, the senators would not relent in their public scolding of Dr. Oz in the hearing. Here you see the words of Senator Amy Klobuchar. It's a major problem when people are spending more time and more money and they're gaining more and more weight. Now, with this statement, you gotta admit Senator Klobuchar sounded a bit personally bothered. I mean, don't get me wrong, she looks nice and healthy herself, but just reading this, it feels personal. And in that vein, it's also fair to acknowledge the well-known theater aspect of these hearings where many of the congressional members are clawing at the opportunity for a viral moment or soundbite that makes the news cycle. But Senator Claire McCaskill seemed to have arrived prepared and well-researched and truly concerned about public safety. This made for some robust sparring between her and Oz.
Well, if I could disagree about whether they work or not, and I'll move on to the issue of the words that I used. And just with regard to whether they work or not, take green coffee bean extract as an example. I'm not going to argue that it would pass FDA muster if it was a pharmaceutical drug seeking approval, but among the natural products that are out there, this is a product that has several clinical trials. There was one large one, a very good quality one, that was done the year that we talked about this in 2012. Listen, I
No,
give...
I want to know about that clinical trial, because the only one I know was 16 people in India that was paid for by the company that was in fact, at the point in time you initially talked about this being a miracle, the only study that was out there was the one with 16 people in India that was written up by somebody who was being paid by the company that was producing it.
Well, this paper argued that there was no one paying for it, but I have the 5 papers actually, plus a series of basic science papers on it as well. But Senator McCaskill, we can spend a lot of time arguing the merits of whether green coffee and extract is worth trying or not worth trying. Many of the things that we argue that you do with regard to your diet are likewise criticizable. I mean, should you be on a low-fat diet, a low-carb diet? I've spent a good part of my career recommending that folks have a low-fat diet. We've come full circle in that argument now, no longer recommend that, many of us who practice medicine, because we realized that it wasn't working for our patients. So it is remarkably complex, as you know, to figure out what works for most people even in a dietary program. Even in the practice of medicine, we evolve by looking at new ideas, challenging orthodoxy and evolving them. So when I hold, these are the 5 papers, these are clinical papers, and we can argue about the quality of them, very justifiably. I can pick apart papers that showed no benefit as well. But at the end of the day, if I have clinical subjects, real people having undergone trials, and in this case, I actually gave it to members of my audience. It wasn't a formal trial. It was just
Which wouldn't pass, the trial you did with your audience, you would not say that would ever pass scientific muster.
No, I would never publish the paper. It wasn't done under the appropriate IRB guidance. That wasn't the purpose of it. The purpose was for me to get a thumbnail sketch. Was this worth talking to people about or not?
So let's pause the Senate hearing and talk about Dr. Oz and his show. 63-year-old Mehmet Oz was born June 11, 1960 in Cleveland, Ohio, to Turkish immigrants Suna and Mustafa Oz. Between 2003 and 2009, Dr. Oz rose to prominence as a regular guest on The Oprah Winfrey Show, making frequent appearances to discuss health and medical issues. He was such a popular guest that he landed his own daily talk show in 2009. Surprisingly, it would be this element of his career that would surround him with criticism and backlash, perhaps only second in magnitude to the harm caused to his reputation when he ran for Senate seat as a Republican against Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor at the time, John Fetterman, in 2022. But before we get into all of that, let's return to his talk show, The Dr. Oz Show. It is perhaps impossible to overstate the degree of controversy surrounding his daytime program, The Dr. Oz Show, and this controversy has come from many different directions. The medical community has spoken out against the program, with the British Medical Journal including this show in a prospective operational study and publishing the conclusion that only a third of the claims made on The Dr. Oz Show were backed by believable evidence. In 2015, a group of physicians from various institutions penned a letter to the medical school where Dr. Oz was serving as vice chairmanship, a letter calling for the dean of medicine there to dismiss Dr. Oz from the institution altogether. In this letter, the physicians called Dr. Oz holding a position at a, quote, prestigious university, which was Columbia's University Medical School at the time. They called Dr. Oz holding a position there unacceptable. They went on to say, "We are surprised and dismayed that Columbia University's College of Physicians would permit Dr. Mehmet Oz to occupy a faculty appointment, let alone a senior administrative position in the Department of Surgery." And during a 2014 Senate hearing, Senator Claire McCaskill expressed concerns that Dr. Oz, through his daytime show, was perpetuating scams and dishing out medical advice in a way that harms consumers. At the end of the day, this Senate hearing, with his scathing, unflattering presentation of Dr. Oz's history, could only effectively punish him with public shame. Dr. Oz was not shown to have any financial connection with the products that he promoted on his show, The Dr. Oz Show. And despite scornful rebukes and public castigations, he was never penalized by any authoritative body, including the FTC or the New York Board of Medicine, for any manner of fraud or misconduct. Nonetheless, opinions in general are still very mixed regarding Dr. Oz. And although it's fair enough to attribute such a mixed bag to a public that is skeptical when it comes to alternative therapies in general, it is worth noting that Dr. Oz may have further harmed his already shaky reputation with his Senate run in 2022. Take for evidence this highly rated video on Dr. Oz from Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. It is titled Dr. Oz and Nutritional Supplements. The top comment is one placed well after this taping first aired, but was heavily supported, with the viewer saying they were watching this again to celebrate Dr. Oz's defeat in Pennsylvania. And another highly liked comment saying, important to rewatch now that Oz has announced he's running for political office. Main lesson, Oz is full of it. So let's talk a little about what Dr. Oz's political bid taught us about him. We learned that Dr. Mehmet Oz identifies as a Republican, and his stated principles and goals did not really deviate from your standard run-of-the-mill Republican platform. Dr. Oz was even endorsed by a person considered by many as the current head of the Republican Party. So why did Dr. Oz lose his race, and why did so many despise his run? I, the ugly doctor, can't say for sure, but there are two themes that can be argued to have depressed his chances for a win. For one, Dr. Oz was running for a Pennsylvania Senate seat after having resided the past 2 years in New Jersey. And two, Dr. Oz was viewed as full of it.
I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité.
Dr. Oz, trying to connect with the poors, trying to let them all know that he's really suffering from inflation himself, especially when it comes to the necessary ingredients for a crudité, which I'm sure most people fully aware of what that is, right?
We got more of the video in a second, but I have to confess, I was just saying off here, 52 years, I have never heard that word. I never saw it written, I never heard it. And okay, you can say, oh yeah, you're a barbarian, that's fine. Crudité? I thought he was ordering up a coup d'etat, which makes more sense for Republicans.
100%. Okay. All right, so there were also some pretty grave mistakes there, especially for a candidate who's a carpetbagger in this Senate race in Pennsylvania. We'll tell you what I mean by that in just a moment, but first, let's watch more of this video.
Here's a broccoli, that's $2, not a ton of broccoli there. There's some asparagus, that's $4. Yep, carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10 of vegetables there. And then we need some guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa. Yeah, salsa there. $6. Must be a shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité. This doesn't include the tequila. I mean, that's outrageous. And we got Joe Biden to thank for this.
Do we thank Joe Biden for the fact that you obviously have never gone grocery shopping in your life, and that head of broccoli is not $4, it's probably $4 a pound?
Oh my God, he's never gone shopping. Oh my God, oh, that is unbelievable. I missed that, Anna, you're totally right. Okay, he's never shopped a day in his life, that's amazing. Did you guys hear him bungling the name of the store? He called it Wegner's. There's no Wegner's. He's never been there. There's two different stores. There's one Wegmans in New Jersey where he actually lives, and that's probably where he was. But there's Wegner's in Pennsylvania where he's running for office. He's smushing together. Here we are, Wegner's. Okay, no, you're in New Jersey, aren't you? You're in New Jersey at Wegmans, right? But it doesn't matter. He doesn't even know. He's like, what is this thing? Oh, this Ralph fella has a lot of stores out in California. No, it's a grocery store. It's called Ralph's. All right, anyway.
All right.
He's so clueless. Why'd you make the video?
No.
You rich schmuck, why'd you make the video?
Thank you, Dr. Oz. Thank you for making the video. I mean, it's just amazing because he keeps thinking he's like owning his political opponent, who of course is John Fetterman. And every time he puts out a political ad or does one of these stunts, he just demonstrates to the people of Pennsylvania and the rest of the country how out of touch he is. No one, like most people don't know what crudités are or is. And more importantly, like you just made it clear you didn't actually live in Pennsylvania. You don't know the correct name of the grocery store that you're shopping at. You obviously have someone shopping for groceries on your behalf because you think that head of broccoli is $4, when again, I could be wrong, but whenever I go grocery shopping, especially for produce, it's not, oh, this head of broccoli is $4, it's $4 a pound.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of the viewers, they're like, they said, in those neck of the woods, which is New Jersey, not Pennsylvania, those prices that he listed were fairly normal. And he said, can you believe the salsa is $6? When did you last buy salsa? Was it $5 last time you bought it? What do you know? You never buy it. You can tell he didn't bring a bag. He's got nothing. He's like, oh, look at this. I normally go shopping. Here, I picked this up. Then I pick this up. I don't know where to catch.
So in essence, with his unsuccessful run for Senate, Dr. Oz piled on more distrust and added to sentiments that despite his flashy presentation and promises, he is generally out of touch and duplicitous. So what do I, the ugly doctor, make of Dr. Oz? Well, for one, I think this was an honest part of his testimony on Capitol Hill that day when he said, "My show is about hope." So here we are at the central question for this video. Is Dr. Oz good or harmful? Now, this question is posed with the given that no one is absolutely one or the other. However, it's worth mentioning that the prior video published on this channel featuring another physician, Dr. Yunnan Now of My 600 Pound Life, has a comment section with nothing but celebration for Dr. Now. However, I have a feeling it won't be so clear-cut for Dr. Oz. As stated earlier, controversy follows this man. So let's look at facts that support a good doctor and then return to the more unsavory aspects of his reputation and determine some possible conclusions. To begin, this is my overall opinion. Dr. Mehmet Oz reminds me of the wizard character from the classic movie The Wizard of Oz.
I warned everybody that I'm not going to mention specific brands, but I do want to go through exactly what I would look for. So you want to look on that list of ingredients. There should be 0 fillers. There should be 0 binders, 0 artificial ingredients, right? And remember, since you should never see my picture next to it because I never sell it. If you see my picture next to it, that means they're stealing from you. And I guarantee you, as soon as the show airs, there can be thousands of fake ads out there, so don't go for those. I don't want you to be confused, so I do want to answer questions from the audience just to make sure you're all on the same page with me. So
I need to change my life.
that's what the show is all about. You actually have the power to restart your body. That's what we're going to talk about. We're back talking about the newest, fastest fat buster, Garcinia Cambogia Extra.
You see what I mean? It is my opinion that Dr. Oz is actually a good something, just as the Wizard of Oz said he was a good man, while being not so good when it comes to some other things, just as the Wizard of Oz said, "I'm just a bad wizard." Let's look at the good. Did you know that in 2014, Dr. Oz premiered another production called Surgeon Oz, where they highlighted his workdays as a practicing physician?
Now, yours are thicker. It's like someone took cardboard and put plaster on them. So they don't move the way they're supposed to move. They don't let the blood flow through. So it backs back up into the lungs. And the lungs, like a sponge, suck up all the blood. They get boggy and they don't work. So when you try to walk up those stairs, you've got to stop and give your lungs a chance to relax until you get to the next step. Quarter of people come see me, they don't need surgery.
Okay.
You need surgery.
Okay.
You ought to get it done within a few months so you don't run into more chronic problems.
School ends June 26th.
Yeah, you're very conscientious about your work. Finish school first.
Will you be the person doing this?
If you want me to, I will.
Absolutely. It has to be you. I'm not getting it done.
I promise. I promise
You're
you.
kidding.
I'll do your operation. I'm going to send you for a new scan, just so we can see where we are right now.
Okay.
Do you see how Dr. Oz explained things to this patient so clearly and compassionately, to the extent that she wanted reassurance that he would be the surgeon fixing her heart? And understandably so, I think. I mean, you could sense this man's empathy and care. And if you can stomach the fluff and look past the theatrics, you'll see this version of Dr. Oz even on his talk show. As much as it admittedly has infomercial vibes, we have to acknowledge that people seem to feel heard and cared for by Dr. Oz on his talk show. Even viewers at home probably walk away feeling more educated because he takes the time to explain and illustrate complex concepts, just as he did in the office with that cardiac patient. And from my background and experience in medicine, I see his display of these elements of education and empathy as filling a huge, sad void in healthcare. And I do mean tragically sad. Imagine it's Monday, the beginning of the week, and you wake up with pain all over. You immediately try to recall your activities of the previous day because you don't have a chronic illness and you lead a pretty healthy life. So it must have been something you lifted wrong or an awkward movement, or maybe you think, I'm getting the flu. And by the end of the day, you settle on it being a particularly bad case of the flu for sure, because you've never been in this much pain all over. And you notice how exhausted you were all day. You lay your head on the pillow that night and thank goodness, will I be glad when this flu is over. For the next week, you cancel going out with your friends and ask your spouse to hold down the home. And you've even called out of work for the last 2 days. It's now the weekend and you're looking forward to resting up and feeling better. But next week comes and you're no better. So you set an appointment with your doctor. The nearest available date is 2 weeks away because the scheduler classified your symptoms as non-urgent. 2 weeks pass by, and you arrive for your appointment just grateful to finally be getting help. But you don't really get help. The doctor says your vitals and physical exam are normal, so she will need to order some tests. In the meantime, you are told that you can take over-the-counter medications. These help some while days pass and you wait for the test results, but nothing really relieves the pain completely, and no matter what you eat or drink, you are debilitatingly tired. You know there's something seriously wrong, so you ask your spouse to accompany you to your appointment where you can both get the results together. You both even cry a little the night before the appointment, just dreading what you're going to be told. But when the moment arrives, neither you nor your spouse are crying, but instead you're both speechless from shock. The doctor has just explained that all your test results are normal. Blood labs show no inflammation, no anemia, no abnormalities. You ask the doctor what's next, and she tells you to eat well and exercise. You're getting older, and we all feel a little different as we age. On the way home from the appointment, your spouse talks about how relieved he is for your good news. But you're not so sure about how you feel. But finally, after some time, you decide your diet could stand some cleaning up, and you join a gym. However, as time goes by, it's clear that the over-the-counter pain relievers aren't doing much, and the change in your diet isn't helping. In fact, the day that you went to exercise, you felt even worse. But your spouse is no longer doing your part of the household duties and seems irritated when the tasks are not completed. Even worse, you're out of days off on your job, but you simply can't imagine returning. But there's nothing wrong with you, so why can't you get it together? But then you turn on Dr. Oz, and this episode is about someone experiencing a mystery illness, and your story and hers are mirror images. Same course, same symptoms, same frustration. This is the episode about fibromyalgia, and Dr. Oz features another physician who explains fibromyalgia is a chronic pain syndrome.
Absolutely. Fibromyalgia is a chronic pain syndrome. It can be very debilitating for patients. Patients often complain of a number of symptoms. Probably the main one is widespread pain. So they have pain all over their bodies, in the muscles, in the connective tissues. And usually this pain lasts for at least 3 months or longer. But in addition to the widespread pain, patients have other symptoms, such as the ones you mentioned: headache, fatigue, insomnia, etc. So it's really the combination of both the pain and these other symptoms that creates this condition. And, it's sort of thought of almost as an invisible condition, because quite honestly, you can look at a patient and really not see it on them. But on the inside, they're really struggling with it.
What kinds of folks are at risk for this?
Well, this condition most commonly affects women. This condition may run in families. We also know that it can coexist with other medical conditions, things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, etc. And we also know that sometimes, and this is a theory, that there may be stressors or traumas that actually might even bring on the condition in the first place.
And should folks think of it as a life-threatening disorder?
Actually, Dr. Oz, yes. It's shocking, but yes, this is a life-threatening disorder. Now, fibromyalgia is not a deadly condition. People can live very full lives with this condition, but it is life-threatening. And when I say that, I mean in the sense of the holistic sense. Patients' quality of life is affected. I have patients in my practice that have fibromyalgia, and I've heard them say things like, Dr. Cottle, I feel like I can't get up out of bed in the morning because I have so much pain. I feel like I've been hit by a bus. They can't live their life to the fullest. They can't go to work. They can't see their family and friends. So in this respect, yes, fibromyalgia absolutely threatens the quality of life that patients have.
Then Dr. Oz speaks with the guest who has the diagnosis, and turns out she's experienced the same mental and societal frustrations as you. She too was told, "Sorry, there's nothing wrong with you." And to that, Dr. Oz says, "It angers me, I gotta say." Now, how does that dose of empathy make you feel? Vindicated, I'd imagine.
About 4 years ago, my health took a dramatic turn. It all began like I had the flu. My body hurt, I was nauseous, dizzy, and I could not get out of bed. My doctor told me I had a virus. It was affecting my whole body. I couldn't say, oh, I have a headache, or oh, my legs hurt. It was just everywhere. I went to my ears, nose, and throat doctor, a neurologist. I even was telling my gynecologist, any and every test they could do, they did. Nobody had any answers. The doctors told me that I was just stressed. At this point, I started to mentally break down. The doctors were making me feel like I was a hypochondriac. I was spending time and money trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and I was left with no answers and frustration. It was the worst year of my life. Finally, I went to one more doctor, and he told me that indeed I did have something wrong. It was called fibromyalgia. And just somebody telling me that they could help me, I felt like, oh my God, I could breathe again.
Thanks for sharing your story. So you spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort to get the right diagnosis. How did it feel when you were told that it was all in your head?
I felt like I was mad, I was angry, I was upset, but I was scared because I went through test after test after test. You know what I mean? I had brain scans, I had sonograms, I had blood work, I had upper GIs, I had everything done, and they kept saying, sorry, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, a woman who takes care of 4 kids 24/7 and, you know, a family, and I'm laying in bed, and now we're on the 3rd month, I can't get out of bed.
I mean, it angers me, I got to say, because I hear these stories all the time, and I'm called about fibromyalgia by you, our viewers, all the time. And this is a very common scenario. In fact, I heard you had to bring your family with you to the doctor's office. Why is that?
Because I felt like I needed an advocate to say, she's telling you the truth. You know, she can't get out of bed. She lives a very good life. You know, she's always happy. She's always doing. She's never sitting still. And here she is in bed 24/7.
Did any doctor ever directly say you're a hypochondriac?
Yeah, you know, I kept coming back to my doctors because I knew I was sick and I didn't know what was wrong. And the one doctor said, well, you know, maybe it's in your head, you know, like you're being a hypochondriac.
I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless.
I went home and I cried. I cried.
You go to your provider and ask if fibromyalgia might be your issue. She refers you to rheumatology, where you indeed receive the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. And now the door is open to try new treatments and support. This is the good of Dr. Oz. The education, the information, the empathy, the hope to try again to get to wellness. However, this is also a particularly vulnerable population. So when Dr. Oz positions himself before viewers as a knowledgeable, empathetic figure, he automatically gains a voice in their lives. And as a voice for medicine, that's a huge responsibility. So where does personal agency and responsibility stop and the culpability of a TV personality like Dr. Oz begin? There are no simple answers here. But we cannot equate Dr. Oz to the intentionally predatory vendors who have used his name and likeness on their unregulated products that do not work and who offer products that don't even contain the ingredients represented on their packages. However, we have to acknowledge that Dr. Oz has some degree of responsibility, knowing that his primary audience aren't other medical doctors and may therefore have difficulty appropriately handling his advice. If we're talking an episode that leads the viewer to say to their doctor, might I have this? And the doctor takes the appropriate steps to get them to the diagnosis and the treatment that they need, Dr. Oz has done some good. But if we're talking about the problem where his advice leads to lay people buying and trying different supplements, thinking that they're going to get significant results, when, as Dr. Oz says in his own words regarding the efficacy of these products, they don't have the scientific muster to present as fact, we're talking about the other side of Dr. Oz. When leading people to try products that may not work, why use flowery language to oversell them? If anything, that type of situation calls for caution and reservation. I'm just saying, if it were me, the ugly doctor, I think a show about weight loss would necessarily emphasize that obesity remains one of the most difficult conditions in medicine to resolve. There are still no easy answers. There aren't even easy answers for those just needing to or wanting to lose a few pounds. If you're struggling with one of these issues, I encourage you not to give up and continue to work with your licensed physician. If you're obese, maybe even consider a bariatric specialist. You're dealing with a complex problem and you should not be doing that alone. I mean, that would be the meat of my message. Producers can add all the flash and pizzazz they like. I would not even object to adding Garcinia cambogia, green tea extract, or green coffee extract and raspberry ketones as part of the conversation. But I would use more cautious language. Like, if you're wondering if I use anything to help me maintain a healthy weight, I must say I'm impressed with some of the early limited studies published about green coffee extract. Perhaps one day it will be approved for weight loss. I found a product that seems to help support my family and I as we try to maintain a healthy weight. It may be worth discussing with your doctor whether there's a product available in your area that is safe for you to try. there. But I don't think Dr. Oz realizes how important it is to be so transparent and toned down about the products he's featuring for weight loss. Dr. Oz has enjoyed a privileged life from almost every angle. He's healthy, he's a physician, and some sources place his estimated net worth in the neighborhood of $500 million. He can afford to try out various supplements and extracts, the best quality of those products at that. His background as a physician means he knows signs and symptoms that one of those products is causing a problem, such as maybe an electrolyte imbalance, and he knows when to stop it. Being in elite circles and connected medically means him and his family can get a medical appointment right away, whether their issue is urgent or not. His viewer sees him saying, "What's the newest, fastest fat buster?" And they say, "What's that, Dr. Oz?" "Oh, Garcinia Cambogia." And next time they're in Walmart, they pick up some. Again, probably not the quality that Dr. Oz uses for him or his family. A viewer may have heard Dr. Oz say, consult your doctor before they use something. But you know what? Number one, their doctor already told them to lose weight and they haven't. And they're embarrassed to return waving a product from the Dr. Oz show looking foolish, asking if they should try this. Number two, a viewer may not have the luxury to take the day off of work or pay a copay just to ask about something they can just get for themselves at Walmart. Number three, most viewers certainly have no way of knowing if they are using the product listed on the package or something cheaper that unscrupulous vendors certainly do not object to selling as the real thing. All this to say, it is hard to deny that Dr. Oz was irresponsible with his daytime TV show. He almost as good as admits this himself.
Incendiary, and it provided fodder for unscrupulous advertisers. And so that clip that you played, which is over 2 years old, and I've done hundreds of segments since then. We have specifically restricted our use of words. We are literally not speaking about things I would otherwise talk about. There's a product that I've never talked about in the show that I feel very strongly about because I know what will happen. I will say something in fact, we did a show with Yacon syrup, which you did not bring up.
However, I do see the good in Dr. Oz and his intentions. I think it's okay to watch his show even and listen to what he has to say. Just realize that he's not your doctor and you definitely need one of those before you start trying to do what he does. Even now on Instagram, he's flashing that Hollywood smile with his laid hair and dreamy eyes, beckoning you to join him on his alternative medicine endeavors. Just make sure you have a guide, aka your very own licensed physician, before following the advice of this particular Oz.
A joyful life is about striving every day to reach the targets that you want to achieve. My good friend and mentor Deepak Chopra and I are collaborating to help you design your ideal strategy by sharing each of ours. My favorite tactic is automating my morning, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single day. I get up at the same time, 6:15. I do about 10 minutes of sun salutation yoga, take my supplements, I break a 30-minute sweat, and then I do a cold plunge every day before sitting down to work. I also delay my breakfast until late morning. And then, of course, I open up. I start eating a diverse array of foods. That includes, of course, lots of nuts. I also start mixing up all the other things that I'm doing to bring variety to my life, whether that's work tasks, phone calls, spending time with family and friends. I do a lot more too. And to read more about what I do, what Deepak Chopra's approach to longevity is, please subscribe to my newsletter at droz.com.